Welcome to Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jessie Ott, the host of this podcast, which is all about beverage innovation. I talk with innovation pioneers from agriculture to glass. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to be notified of all new episodes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thursdays. I'm Jessie Ott, and I have Erica Duecy here today with the Business of Drinks. Hello, Erica. Welcome.
Hi, Jessie. So glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm stoked. We just had a great panel discussion that came out in a couple of parts. The first part of this year, which we recorded in December, and that was really fun, wasn't it?
I loved it. Yeah, I mean, so many good insights. I think it was a group of really talented women from throughout the drinks industry, and everyone's insights were totally fascinating and also right on.
Yeah, agreed. And the more I've kind of been out there listening and looking out on LinkedIn on insights and whatnot, even maybe not so much just in the alcohol industry, but just, with consumers and the younger generation of flavors, it's just coming from all directions.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating.
Totally.
So where are you calling from?
So I am in Jersey City, New Jersey, right across the river from Manhattan.
Nice.
And and I live here with my husband and two kids. And I mean, we've been here for a long time. We lived in Brooklyn before this, but Jersey City, underrated, underdog city.
The underdog.
Yeah, totally. But we
those
love
are the best.
Place. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I lived in New York for about almost 3 years. And so I've been over there a few times. And, just to check it out, I've been down to the Ocean City.
Yeah.
Down there, it's really fun.
Totally.
The boardwalk and everything.
Yeah, I love that. Like Brighton Beach area and Island and so much stuff to see around here. Yeah,
I went to a wedding long time ago, it seems now, but it was in northern New Jersey and it was really beautiful up there.
Yeah. I know. I grew up in Seattle, and I did not expect that that New Jersey would actually be really green and beautiful. But alas, it is. It's not just what you see when you drive down 95 and you see some terribly polluting factories right from the car window. But there's a lot of really beautiful places in New Jersey I have found, and I've been pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Great places. So you're from Seattle.
Yeah. Grew up in Seattle and kind of
Skid Row.
Yeah. Love Seattle, some parts more than others. But yeah, grew up on the West Coast and kind of hopscotched around the country, lived in Miami and Chicago and San Francisco, went to undergrad in the Philadelphia area. So, kind of have lived in many different places around the U.S. before
you hit them all, except for Texas, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. Most markets. But yeah, I mean, it's, I think from my perspective, publishing, right? So I went to grad school for journalism in the Chicago area. And after that, it was kind of hey, if you're going to be in publishing, you have to go to New York. So that landed me here 20 some odd years ago and met my husband pretty quickly and realized that this is where I was going to stay.
Wow. Yeah, I lasted about 3 years out there. And then I took a job within the Remy business, field marketing, and then they moved me to Atlanta, Fort Lauderdale, and then Dallas, and then move on from there.
Nice.
So not quite as much as you. I used to because I went to grad school in France and lived in Paris for a minute.
Nice.
I used to have a cutesy little thing. It's I'm a real gypsy. I've lived in 25 cities in 2 countries and 5 states. Or
I love that.
Oh, and I play guitar, which I don't anymore.
Yeah. And my side hustle is a subway busker. So there you
go. Oh man, I remember being in the subway once, and for some reason we had our cards in our pocket. We went shopping at IKEA or something, my girlfriend and I. And she's like, just jump the fence, or jump the subway thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why? It's right here. And so we jumped it and we got caught and we had to pay a fine.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. So silly.
I know exactly. Like, why? Why
So
did you do
juvenile.
it?
Oh, our 20s.
I know. Oh my gosh. Oh, the kids.
Oh, the kids. Oh, the kids. So how old are your kids, speaking of kids?
Yeah, so I've got one kid in high school and one kid in 4th grade, which is like hard to believe. It goes very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My nephews are about to be in high school, so they get really big.
It's a busy time. Time. I think like sports and after school activities and like, and suddenly there's like boys and like, like all of these new sort of interpersonal things to deal with. Like, you hit that as soon as you hit 13 with any of those kids, it's like, wow, we are in a whole new world.
Yes.
Fresh challenges.
Yes. So you have boys or girls or?
2 girls.
2 girls. Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I figured.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know. For some reason, I think like I'm suited to be a mom of girls. We're definitely like, I definitely drill into them like the girl power. And I went to a girls' high school and a women's college. And so, yes. So the feminist angle is definitely strong in our house.
Nice. I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
Yes, female empowerment. I love it.
Totally. You gotta have it. Gotta do it, especially with the kids.
So when did you know that you wanted to be a journalist?
Yeah, I mean, so I actually did get to live abroad as well. So I lived in Indonesia, and when I was in college, I was an anthropology major.
Oh, wow.
So when I was in college, I got a grant from the Ford Foundation to go to Indonesia and study with sex workers living on the island of Java. So I did that and, ended up, creating this really in-depth report about sexual health and kind of perceptions of HIV risk. And it sort of spoke to like my dissertation, more or less like spoke to what are the challenges around HIV education, and there was a lot of challenges on a lot of different levels. But I, completed this big report, submitted it to the Ford Foundation, and then like, that's it. It's like crickets, like I think that's what a lot of academic research is. You submit a report and like, does it actually lead to policy changes,
right,
anything actual happening in the world to improve things? So at that point I said like, you know what, that was like not super gratifying as an outcome. And I think I should be a journalist because like I do like the tools and techniques of anthropology research, which is interviewing and and learning the language and like kind of embedding with the people who you are studying with and like trying to understand sort of the greater context of whatever the situation is that you're trying to essentially report on. So I said, you know what, I think like journalism is actually what I should do. So then I came back to the States and eventually made my way to the Chicago area where I went to grad school for journalism.
Wow. Okay. So you pivoted right then and there and dove right in.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I did work in startups. I worked in music startups in San Francisco for like a minute before that, like years, because that was really fun. And that
would be really fun.
Yeah. And I was very much into music. And in San Francisco at the time, it was the burgeoning electronic music scene. So after graduation, I did like the San Francisco startup scene, then did the graduate school. I knew that was like where I was eventually going, but I mean, I graduated in 1998 from undergrad, and at that time, like it was just booming. Like, I signed up with a music startup, and there was something like, any referral that you send to us to also who is successfully hired, we'll give you a $7,000 referral bonus.
Wow.
I was like, oh.
Whoa.
So I, in San Francisco, like got every single person I knew hired to that startup, and then and then like took some time off and applied to grad school.
Oh, smart.
Yeah,
Very smart. So what happens after grad school?
Yeah, after grad school, straight to New York. And at that time, I had done business journalism. I knew that was something I was interested in, but I was really interested in restaurants and food trends. So I got a job at a trade publication in New York and was a food and restaurant trends reporter. And so spent a couple of years just like really essentially like dining out for every single meal and reporting on
that sucks.
It does actually surprisingly get old after
it does for sure. I don't want to eat out every day.
Exactly. For the first couple of years, no, I was good. But after a while I was like, oh my God, another 7-course meal. But after that, I kind of like expanded my interest. So first, it was like food trends and restaurants. And then I went on to run the restaurants and hotels coverage for Fodor's Travel, which I don't know if you remember Fodor's Travel. It was like the big travel guidebooks. And that was fantastic. And so I got to oversee, 500 destinations and all the food and restaurant and hotel reporters in all those places, and really helped to shape what that section of the book looked like, as well as online.
Very cool.
And that was really fun. And so like, as I was doing this though, I also was becoming more interested in the drinks world. Because, after you eat out so much, like
right.
eventually you become interested in like, what is this thing that is being paired with my meal? So I, started to get into cocktails and started to get into wine. And of course, I think as most people in the drinks industry have found, like once you start down the rabbit hole, you just keep going. So I did WSET certifications, like started going down that road. And I wrote a cocktail book, and I became the wine editor for a magazine, and, just kind of moved through like my interests, basically, like found what my passions were and just pursued them professionally sort of every step of the way.
That's pretty cool. Not everybody can say they've done that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was very fortunate in the time, right? And so from there, I then went over to Savoir magazine and helped lead a relaunch of the website for them. And then from that point, continued on to Architectural Digest and Condé Nast, and helped them really start to work on a millennial strategy for, engaging an entire new demographic of consumers.
What was that like?
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of research.
Yeah, totally. It was really an exciting time because, kind of in my career of having help, publishing brands through relaunching their websites and like building recipe databases and re-envisioning, what original content producer teams would look like. I was able to, win a lot of awards and create some pretty exciting content that I'm still very proud of.
Yay. That's awesome.
Original video programs for Savoir and for Architectural Digest. And so I think what became really compelling to me was this kind of new world of digital content and being able to help create, exciting projects. So I got to work with so many interesting people and, and hire photographers who would work in-house and videographers who would work in-house at these publications. And like, we would come up with, whatever our wildest fantasies were of what we wanted to create, and then like go out and do it. And at that time in the late 2010s, budgets were available for those sorts of things. And so we could like go down to New Orleans and shoot a house tour at the Brennans, like that type of stuff, or, kind of like go on location to different places and, create sort of like really cool event photography. And so it was a really exciting time to work in publishing. And yeah, and at some point though, I just kind of, saw the writing on the wall. I think the last year that I worked at Condé Nast, they had lost like $150 million. And I was like, this is not sustainable. So I kind of knew the writing was on the wall for publishing, and like
things are changing and evolving.
Totally. And teams were starting to get cut. And I was like, all right, you know what? There's got to be something better here. And so at that point, I had really gotten so much into the drink side that I, in doing the WSET certifications, I at this point knew a lot of people in the drinks industry. And so many of them were like, oh, there's just no good publication for us to read. And so I came up with this idea for a trade publication that would be actually interesting to read. And not like pay for play crappy content, but like actual original editorial. And there was nothing else like that at the time. So, the things that existed were either pay for play, or they were for the C-suite, like all the CEOs and CFOs, but there was nothing for like real working somms and, and people who are like in the mid tier of importers and distributors and producers who are starting out, nothing. And so I came up with this idea for a publication that would cater to the needs of these different audiences. And then I kind of went and looked to see who had gotten the most funding. So I literally went on Crunchbase and like looked to see which startup has gotten the most funding. And SevenFifty, which was a platform for to service both importers and distributors, as well as on and off premise accounts through like, instead of having to order through like telephones, you now could do it online through this platform. So I approached them and they loved the idea and they hired me to start this publication for them. So I went on board with
That's awesome.
and we created the publication. It was called 750 Daily. It still exists.
Yeah.
So I ran that for some years, and that was really exciting because I think, it grew quickly. It filled a niche in the industry that didn't exist. We won like dozens of business reporting awards. It was very high quality content. So that was like a really exciting project.
Yeah, that's huge. I know 750 Daily. I remember, I don't remember the exact like timing where it just all of a sudden appeared.
Yeah.
But I do remember the content. I'm like, wow, this is actually really good. Yeah, it's really good content.
Yeah, definitely. So I haven't been involved with that for a long time. But after that, I then went and I started consulting. And that kind of, leads us to where we are here today, which is, as I was running 750 Daily, I saw a need for data and insights. And there was not really any data and insights that were available to people in the industry who are not working for like big portfolios, right? Because if you want Nielsen, you have to work for a company that can pay for you to have a seat to view, Nielsen's all of its dashboards and reports.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that there was a need, and like I kept on going to Drizzly, which now has been acquired by Uber. It was acquired by Uber for $1 billion, and then they took the functionality of Drizzly, which was online ordering of alcohol delivered to your door, and then put it into Uber Eats. But at the time, I approached the chief marketing officer of Drizzly, and I was like, "Hey, you guys have so many incredible data. Like you're sitting on a treasure trove of data,
right?
And like, what could you do with this? Well, I have some ideas. This basically could be turned into a publication where you then are catering both to your retailers who are part of your network, as well as to PR and media who really need this. And so they were like, okay, yes, we do need something like this. And so they hired me to build out that publication for them and start this service. It became bevalkinsights.com. And so that kind of further fueled my excitement about data and insights, because there just is not that much free data out there.
Right.
I mean, it is expensive to collect data. It is expensive to do like surveys and all that sort of stuff, which I now have found having commissioned my own surveys. But I think that's, that kind of led me down the path of saying like, there is the need for like data and insights reporting services. And that's kind of what I've become known for. Is I either will conduct research for like associations or government bodies and then help them figure out how to interpret them or how to use those data and insights. So an example is I just finished up a project for the New Zealand government where they were interested in identifying, in the US, are there overlooked cohorts of audiences across the different generations that we could more effectively be marketing to. So I did a big research study for them and then developed up the psychographic personas and a marketing toolkit with messaging for like, how do you actually reach these audiences effectively? How do you market to these audiences effectively? So like, that's an example of the type of consulting that I do now, where I'm really helping people and companies understand like what are the niches that we could or should be marketing to, and like how do we then go and do it. Another thing that I do is original generational research. So I did a survey about a year ago that was looking at millennials and Gen Zs. And we interviewed 1,300 millennials and Gen Zs across all 50 states and asked them, like, what are you drinking? Why are you drinking it? How did you find it? How did you decide to buy it? Like all of these sort of purchase driver questions. And then that turned into a 90-page report that was available for sale on researchandmarkets.com. And like that type of thing, I also do. I realize that it is expensive now that I've commissioned my own data. So that was available for, and it still is available, but it's, for $2,000 for a report, like a 90-page report. So yes, data is expensive to conduct, expensive to
it is.
But I think, having access to free data, and especially for platforms like a Drizzly, or another client that I had was Union, a hospitality POS system, that also had a treasure trove of data, like those types of platforms who would like to get coverage in the media or cater to a certain, clientele, that they really have a motivation to share their data. And so that, like, when those things align, I think that's really wonderful, because, everyone in this industry wants to make data-driven decisions. But it's just that the pricing can be prohibitive to getting access to that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started my company with Crossroads Solutions, our data hub, just because of that.
Yeah.
We cater to more of the small to medium-sized businesses that can't afford the big guns, the big guys that are just so expensive. I mean, just getting syndicated data in itself is expensive.
Totally.
So yeah, 100%. I didn't realize that is so smart to angle the industry like that. What a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's been hugely successful. Like, I remember for one of my clients, we, during that remember the whole Budweiser Bud Light fiasco like a year and a half ago. I mean, we were able to show after that fiasco, by looking at their data, which they power the POS systems in 1,000 on-premise venues like big bars and pubs. We were able to show like where their share was going. So before anyone else reported on it, we were able to say like, okay, it's actually going to Modelo and Michelob Ultra and like all these places, and like show where those shifts were happening. And, the day that we were able to do that, it was like New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, like these incredible, press hits that a lot of companies don't have access to. But like, by using the data that you have, people oftentimes don't realize like that's a huge asset. And reporters everywhere are looking to access that type of data, so it can really elevate the level of a company if they have data and are willing to share it.
I should have you on as an analyst.
I love it. I actually love reading analyst reports.
And help you, and maybe you could promote my my platform for me.
Yes. So we need to dive more into that.
Yeah, no, I think we could maybe work together on it too.
Yeah.
It's really fun and it's really flexible, and it's more about, you know, the education, you know, on the awareness level. It's not very deep, you know. People aren't aware they need it yet. So I think it's going to be a curve, but the more people like you that are out there talking to people about how important these insights are, the faster people are going to pick up on it and hopefully, you know, want to take a look at it at least. Right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the things, you know, on the Business of Drinks podcast. So, you know, I kind of talked a little bit about what the consultancy side is, like the consultancy services that I offer. I also do advising for brands. So, you know, oftentimes that's like helping them, you know, figure out who is like their target market and like how do we market to those people effectively and how can we do that in a cost-effective manner like that. So that's all that side of it. But on the podcast side, you know, it's interesting because we also really leverage data. I mean, we take a pretty data-driven approach to the brands and the people that we bring on the podcast. Like, oftentimes it'll be like an emerging category or subcategory or like, you know, something like that. But it's like really like we like to take this data-driven approach where it's like, we're analyzing like the products and categories that are getting people excited, and they're starting to like move volume. And so that's one of the things that I think is pretty exciting to track is like, it's not just about, you know, we have someone on because they seem like they're the great face of a brand or something, but it's like pretty strategically focused. So like we're interviewing like innovators and icons in the industry who are really doing something different or notable. And so I think like that's of interest. Also, you know, on Business of Drinks, we take a very sort of agnostic approach of like, we cover wine, beer, and spirits. We also cover RTDs. We cover THC and adaptogen drinks. We cover energy drinks. We cover like all of these different categories. Because I think one of the things that I have found most fascinating is, you know, I think a lot of brands, when they're thinking about what, you know, who should I be looking at my competitive set or like who is making like inroads or doing something exciting, they're looking at like who is their direct competitor, like within, you know, the whiskey subcategory or something. But I think the bigger insights and the most exciting kind of developments can be found by looking across categories, right? So if I'm a whiskey brand, I want to see what like the THC guys are doing or what the energy guys are doing to like understand how are they engaging specific audiences that I'm trying to reach, or like what's working right now. Like if a certain subcategory has like a huge amount of like volume change, like it says like this is where we need to be paying attention because it's either like the product or the marketing or like what part of it is really resonating with customers, meaning like retail or on-premise customers or consumers. So I think that's you know, interesting as well. And I think the last thing I'll say about the podcast is like, we are not fluff and puff. So like,
are you saying I'm fluff and puff?
Oh my God, I don't know. Just kidding. You bring on so many great people.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but I think you know, we are definitely looking for like proven insights.
Yeah, your strategy is definitely more business. I mean, you're the Business of Drinks. Yeah. Whereas Thursday is more about storytelling and talking about the human connection.
Totally,
and people,
which is super important.
Yeah, they're both great, just very different drivers, right?
Yeah, definitely. And we actually we require people to share like real numbers. Like that's a prerequisite. Like we say, you can't come on the show unless you're willing to share numbers.
I love that.
Yeah.
I figured you got them from somewhere else.
No. Well, like in the rare occasion, but like for the most part, you know, at this point now we're established enough that we just say like, look, we're looking for brass tacks strategies and tactics. And like that can't come with like the smoke and mirrors. Like you need to give us real numbers. Otherwise, how can other people in the drinks industry like trust what you're saying? Like you could be totally BSing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so like give us some actual numbers to help us understand what you're actually doing. And I have to say, like, you know, the founders that we've talked to have been incredibly generous. You know, we talked with like Bill Schufeld is one of my favorite guests of all time. He's the founder of Athletic Brewing. And he talked us through literally like the step by step of how he went from like total naysayers at like the first like, you know, 5K where he's like trying to like beg people to take these cans and people are like, yeah, no, near beer, no thanks, you know, to an $800 million company. Like we talked through like all of the stages and he was incredibly generous with like the pitfalls and challenges that he faced. And same with like Fawn Weaver, you know, Fawn Weaver who founded Uncle Nearest. Speaking of storytellers, she is just incredible. But, you know, she started this brand in 2017 and like turned it into the fastest growing whiskey brand of all time, now valued at more than $1 billion. So we were like, how did you go from 2016 being like, I read this article about Nearest in the New York Times and that he actually was the mentor of Jack Daniels. And you turned that not from like just a book or like, but into a brand that is the fastest growing whiskey of all time.
Yeah. Like and on a whim, just by 200 acres.
Yeah.
In Kentucky or Tennessee.
It's an incredible story.
It's an amazing story.
Right. Yeah. And like, so I think but I think that is what's interesting is like, what are people interested in? Yes, they want the numbers, but there has to be the good stories. So storytelling, to your point, is pretty.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I think that's also the success of brands these days too. I mean,
totally.
You know, we've talked about our consumers and how consumers are getting smarter and smarter. You know, they've never been smarter before, right? So they expect certain things from certain companies and brands. And if they don't, if they get in trouble or if something comes out that they don't like, they're canceled. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, they're very into principles of what they want out of a brand and leadership, and then also the story.
Yeah,
which I think is really important.
Definitely, and it has to feel authentic.
Yes,
right. I think like that's one of the key things. Is like, we are like beyond the fluff and puff part of media and like into the like what's real. And that could be a story or it could be numbers or it could be what, but it's just, it really is like, I think things have gotten a lot more real and less PR, you know, like the PR focus is that when I was coming up in the journalism world, like that was really everything. You went with like the party line and like that type of storytelling has just gone away. And now we are in the time of storytelling where it's like question everything. And like, if there's a sense that it could be, you know, fake or that it isn't fully authentic, like, you know, pay attention to those warning signs. So I think that, you know, it's a whole new world of media and storytelling.
Yeah. No, and, you know, it's interesting, too, when you think about our industry way before, you know, all these fancy fun, fruity stuff. And THC and all that. But back in the day, it was wine, right?
Yeah.
Wine was a hand sell. It was a story that you told. It still is.
Yep.
You know, I mean, that it's such a hard sale at such small margins compared to spirits.
It really is.
And, you know, if you could really learn, I think, a lot from studying some of these wine brands that have used this storytelling to get out there from account to account and crossing over from being Italian wine, being in just Italian accounts to other accounts, and you know all the things. It's not new, right? But it does kind of change with the generations on the importance.
Definitely, yeah. And I think, you know, brands have to work harder than they've ever worked, right? Because like with people drinking less but potentially better, I think that there needs to be more opportunities to sell to a broader range of people.
Yep.
So, I was just doing some research for a client, and also just heard Shyla Salmon, who is at Jackson Family, and she oversees all the brand marketing for La Crema. So are you familiar with La Crema, the Chardonnays and Pinot Noir?
Oh, yeah. I drink them.
Yeah, exactly. Well priced, super accessible. I was just looking across all of their channels, like all their marketing and social media channels, and saw Shyla talk in a conference, and she was talking about how one of their most successful activations of all time is taking this mobile tasting room to meet audiences where they're at. So like all of these different pride parades around the US, all of these different sports events around the US, a lot of cultural events around the US, like taking a mobile trailer to these places where there are audiences who maybe are never going to go to Napa or Sonoma to visit those wineries, but they might be interested in trying some free wine. And then when they see that brand on the shelf at the grocery store, then they're more likely to pick it up because they have a wonderful association with having been at the head of the Charles Regatta in Boston and, remembered drinking this, glass of wine in a convivial sort of setting. So I think that type of thing, in the research she presented, she was able to show the lift of a huge percent of their consumers over the past year were new to the brand, but not only new to the brand, new to wine, new to the wine category. So those types of activations of meeting customers where they're at in a diversity of non-traditional settings is, I think, the future of wine. That type of thing is where the outreach needs to be. And look, not everyone has the budget of a La Crema, right? But I think using that example as inspiration of, hey, how can we reach out in places literal location to demographics or audiences that we don't typically market to, and how can we become involved in our community in a new way? Those types of things are what is going to help wine brands, because as we know, just looking at Nielsen's data from 2024, wine was hit the worst of all the Bev Elk categories from both a volume and value perspective. So wine is having some challenges, and reaching out to new audiences and doing it effectively is that's got to be the most important thing on most wine brands' mind right now.
Yeah, what's the crossover if they don't want a full bottle of wine? And they, the other thing too to think about is the environmental concern on all these bottles too. I mean, not that spirit bottles aren't thrown away and all supposedly recycled or whatever, but I mean, you can drink a bottle pretty easily in a one setting with two people. It's not that difficult, or at a dinner or whatever. I think that environmental concerns, I think it's getting better from what I've heard and understood, but that generation, they're gonna have to figure out what that bridge is.
Totally. It's a great point, because in the survey that I did of the 1,300 millennials and Gen Zs, single serve format was a huge area of interest and purchase. So when I asked people how good of a value is wine ranked very low as a good value product, but it makes sense because what are affordable luxuries? Well, an affordable luxury might be a $4 to $10 can or bottle RTD, right? Or a Starbucks drink.
Yep.
But a $30 bottle of wine, maybe not so much. And how do you convince that person, hey, invest 20 or more dollars in a bottle that you're not sure if you're going to like, because there's no way to try it in advance. Yep. So I think that's a bit of a demographic shift that we see in purchase drivers and interests is the format challenge. So I think wine brands who are able to onboard younger audiences with single serve formats, those are the ones who are going to see a benefit in the long run, because like, yes, the margin might be lower on that thing, or it might be logistically challenging, but it's probably one of the best ways for brands to
Trial.
for like brands to trial their products.
Yep.
Because otherwise it's a hard sell. Like
It has to be cheaper than giving it away for free.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the biggest challenge here is like, how do you affordably trial your products for consumers if you're unwilling to shift to a smaller format, at least for a portion of your production?
And when you see, and I haven't been out in the market in a long time, but you see, like if La Crema per se, or some of these other bigger brands would take advantage of that small format and put them in cans, but nobody wants to do that. You know what I mean? Because the can brands that you have are all startup brands for the most part, right? They're brands that aren't necessarily known out there already. It's kind of like the keg business. Keg business in wine is so smart.
Yeah.
If I had a winery, I'd be all over kegs in wine, because they're great value at a restaurant where you can get it for under $10, which is a great wine.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Versus like 14 for something okay now, because that's how expensive it is.
Definitely. Yeah, and I see also the bag and box wines are taking advantage of that positioning as well, because you can have just one glass, right? Like, I think that's the thing is, like, with a bag and box, you can have one glass and then you can come back 3 weeks later and have more glasses, but the thing is not kicked. And that's being able to offer people product sizes and formats that fit with their lifestyle is starting to become expected.
Yeah.
And so the brands who are able to adapt to that in a variety of ways, like, I mean, bag and box also speaks to the concerns around glass weight, and,
they're great for parties, and
exactly.
They last 6 months, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a great, and they're not expensive, $20-$30. I mean,
they're a huge value.
3 bottles of wine, I think they are.
Definitely. So, generally, like, and some of them even go up to like 70 or 80, but hey, it's high quality wine in there. I like
it lasts.
The Topless Creek Rosé in a box. Like, I'm willing to spend, like however much that costs, because that is super high quality wine, and it's going to last for much of the summer.
Yeah.
No question that they like keep selling out of that. It's like it fills a need.
Yeah.
And there's just, in my age set, I'm Gen X, and in the Gen X age set, but I also know like my millennial friends, like, it's just that waste of having to pour half the bottle down the drain because you didn't want to drink that much. Like, that is really a problem. So I think like any way that brands can overcome that is really helpful to their longevity.
Yeah, they're going to have to be more flexible.
Totally.
It's not just an email list anymore.
Yeah. It's a lot more challenging. I mean, I think, brands really have to think about how is it that we engage in the marketplace? In a couple of weeks, I'm speaking with Ali Wente from Wente Vineyards at the Direct Consumer Symposium in Monterey. And we're bringing like a masterclass to the table, which is really exciting. Basically, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, they had the most of their consumers coming to the winery and on their wine club list were baby boomers. And in just that short amount of time, they were able to completely flip the script so that now their number one audience is millennials.
Nice.
So, yeah. So how did they do that? Well, it was
how did they do that? Yeah.
We talked about it on the Business of Drinks podcast. We have an episode about Ali Wente and how she did it. She really led the charge. But, a lot of it had to do with marketing and social media, as well as some overhauls at the winery. So, for example, they really focused on ramping up their programming in a more casual way. So like it used to be like for the music events that they did, it would be like a $300 ticket for a formal event with a sit down dinner. Now it's like a $50 ticket. Bring your picnic, come as you are, and they do all these events throughout most of the seasons. And then they also made a much more casual format for their tasting lounge. They completely switched up their social media. So like the social media accounts used to look very staged and definitely focused on like vineyards and bottle shots. And like so much of the kind of advising that I help brands with is like, you just can't do that anymore. It needs to feel real and authentic and tell actual stories. So
yep.
Go to their the Wenty's Instagram and TikTok and all of its channels now, and you see the girls who work at, who are the 5th generation leaders of that company, who are like in their 30s and 40s and have real families, doing like day in the life videos of themselves, like with their kids and like at the vineyard, giving like a vintage report and, pouring wine and like making cocktails with friends, like wine cocktails with friends. Like, it seems like, how many wine brands do we know that would be like, yeah, that's totally fine. Make some cocktails with our wine, right?
Yeah.
But like that's what younger audiences want.
That's what they want.
Exactly. Like, so all of these types of examples are just, it's like, it's not so hard. And it also doesn't have to be super expensive.
Yeah.
It's just more of a shift in mindset and then in content strategy to get to a place where your social media channels, where your online marketing, where all of this feels like much more aligned with the interests and need states of younger consumers.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. So do you have any mentors that you want to mention along the way that were significant in any part of it?
So I wish that I did, and that is part of why I am on the board of an organization called Batonage, which is an organization dedicated to mentoring women in wine. And coming up in publishing and then later, in wine and spirits, I really didn't have a mentor at all, and I thought like it was just really, I think it has to do with a generational divide. So a lot of the female bosses that I had coming up were of the mentality of push down the people behind me because I had to claw my way to the top. And when I got to the position where I was starting to be a manager, I was like, this ends with me. Like, I am going to be actively involved in the next generation of helping to raise up women leaders. And so, I've been part of the board of Batonage for a couple of years now, and we help connect young women or people who identify as women with mentors throughout the wine industry. Could be sales, marketing, distribution, import, production, what have you, media. So that organization is fantastic for anyone who's listening or watching. You can reach out to me directly or go to the Batonage website, and we hold events, regular events across the country, and are continually networking with people who are up and coming in the industry and finding ways to help connect them both with jobs and with people who can help them further their careers. And that's great. Such a needed part of this industry. Like, and I know that there are many organizations now that are helping to mentor, people of color, helping to mentor women and others. And I do see that it's starting to get some traction. At this point, Batonage has been around for, almost, 10 years. And we have connected, made more than 2,300 mentor connections.
That's amazing.
I know, which is a huge amount of mentees and mentors being connected across all of the 3 tiers. So I think that's a hugely important thing, is like, if you are in a leadership position in an industry, pay it back, because like that is going to help, the people coming behind, the people coming up, in making it a better place to work for everyone.
When I think about mentors and this question, because I've been doing it, this is my 3rd year now. A lot of women don't have mentors. It's very unusual for women to have multiple mentors. I mean, it does happen, but I think most of the time, or maybe 70% of the time, they may have one or two. Unless, it's an unusual case and someone has, several that have helped them along the way.
Yeah.
But men have several. And I think the generation before us was even more so than it is.
Probably.
You see somebody that's got something special and you invest in them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think it's just really incumbent upon all of us in the drinks industry, because, hey, look, consumer perception right now of alc in particular is having some challenges with all the concerns around health and, even like the Surgeon General warning, and like all of these things are conspiring to, I think, dissuade potentially new talent from coming into the industry. But I don't think that like that necessarily is a reflection. I think we are in a particularly heated moment. But look, alcohol has been around for 5,000 years. I don't think it's going anywhere. Like the way we consume alcohol might change somewhat. We may have more of a moderation focus. Like that is what we're seeing at this moment. But I don't think that it is going to go away completely. And I don't think that we need to run for the hills, and people who are interested in the drinks industry need to like find new things to do with their careers, because that's just not the case.
Right.
Like, I do think that all parts of the industry are going to continue to thrive. And look at the big portfolios. They're smart. They have access to the best data in the world. And they're not freaking out and divesting like all of their alcohol brands. No, like they're being smart and diversifying into non-alc and low alc and energy drinks and other types of beverages. Beverages are not going anywhere. Like what's in them and the percentages of alcohol in them may shift, but that's, that's to be expected. Like we are a country that is, has definitely a lot of interest in trying new things, especially younger generations are very flavor focused and have an eye for novelty. I mean, look, you go into Starbucks and you look at those menus, and every time you walk in there, there's like 10 new things, right? Like Starbucks knows that younger people in particular really love novelty and they love new flavors. And so, I think a lot of portfolios are being very smart in realizing like we have to diversify like quite broadly. And so there's going to continue to be a lot of jobs, a lot of interesting jobs, and they may just have a slight different focus than they did before.
Yeah. No, 100%. We went in and got boba tea the other day. Again, I mean, tons of flavors.
Totally. And customization. I think that's one of the big things, I mean,
tapioca pearls. Well, you want, ice cream on top or creme brulee or
totally. I think that customization, I think we're going to see more and more interest in customizing drinks. I was talking a recent episode of Business of Drinks. We had Caroline Lamb, who is our Gen Z representative. And she was talking about, right now she is having a lot of fun making drinks with like THC tinctures and like all these different sort of flavoring ingredients. And that idea of customization is something that's really exciting for her, and something she's become like more and more interested in. And it really got me thinking about, you hear those among younger consumers, like you think about like their consumer experiences, and they can customize almost everything at every drive-through, at every coffee shop, and I think that experience of customization and the desire to customize based on like your own particular interests, like that is something that we're going to see continuing to grow. So like I wouldn't be surprised seeing like some like, like definitely kits of all sorts of different flavorings you can like add to things as an area of growth for, like throw on, 10 bitters onto my shopping cart and like, let's call it a day. Like there's a million ways to customize your drinks. And like that trend of doing it is just like something that I see continuing on and on. Customization is definitely a trend.
That would be really fun.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to get my own customized drink.
Yeah, it is fun, right? Like I love customizing things.
Yeah,
but
and I love this
younger
adaptogen tincture.
Yeah.
Get a little lift in the afternoon.
Yes, exactly.
Kind of thing, and feel good.
That's yes, exactly. You mentioned functional, like that adaptogen lift or calming or whatever vibe it is that you're looking for. Like I think marketing by vibe is another thing that I see happening a lot of the brands that are doing really well in CPG. Like I'm thinking of like Kin Euphorics and Recess and all of those types of adaptogen drinks. They don't market like by flavor as much as they market by vibe. So I'm looking for calming or energizing or relaxing, right? And like it helps if it is like, flavored strawberry dragon fruit. But like the vibe is like the key selling point for it. And I think that's something that, we'll continue to see as well, like marketing by functional ingredients for sure.
Yeah, I still want this customized drink, Erica. You may have to open up a flavor.
Right? I mean, like there should be a bar
factory,
basically like a boba shop, right?
Yeah,
it's essentially the boba shop model, but make it a bar.
I like this idea very much.
I know. I feel like we should go in on this.
Yeah, we need to find one. I need to go to get out and find one.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds really fun.
Yeah.
I'll sometimes just throw out bottles that I have, and like the different mixes and bitters and all the things, and I'll just stare at it and I'll go, I don't know what to do with it. Like I'm just a terrible bartender. If I have the exact recipe, I can do it, but I'm not. I get so lost behind like trying to. Should I try this? Should I try this? And when I start getting into it and going, it's fun, but like it's pretty overwhelming to try to figure that out. Yeah. It's not my skill set.
I know. I sense an opportunity here. I think there's a market niche waiting to be filled.
What about any resources? Do you have any resources that you've used throughout your career that you'd want to throw out there, or anything from, like groups that you've joined or anything like that has been helpful?
Definitely. I mean, so if you're a member of the media, definitely you can have access fairly easily to like Nielsen and Circana data and IWSR and like all of these different data sources. If you don't have media access to get some of these reports, I would say like really keep an eye on the trade publications to understand what's being reported. I think, Park Street University is a free newsletter, and that's a good place to stay abreast of what's happening in the trend space. Wine Market Council, a lot of these publications, they do press releases and also kind of synopses of their research findings that will be put on like Wine Industry Advisor or different sort of information hubs. And I think like finding that and, staying on top of that information just to understand what the macro trends are that are happening in the drinks industry is pretty significant, because it's just so easy to get caught up in the sort of like, like the thrum of everyone's talking about the sky falling. Everyone's talking about the sky falling, but like that's not like that's not what the markets are doing, Like that there's a counter narrative. Like what is the counter narrative? What does the data say? So I think always having a couple reliable data sources is smart. I also Tom Work, who is he runs the National Association of Wine Retailers and also does some work with Free the Grapes, which is a DTC organization. He has something on Substack, his fermentation blog. I love this blog. He is one of those very data-driven insights people who often provides the counter narrative that is needed to balance out any argument. So I definitely recommend following Tom Wark for listeners who are not yet familiar with him. And then lastly, I'd say, for anyone who's looking to level up in the drinks industry, and we're really mostly focused on wine, but Batonnage is a fantastic organization to become involved with. They are, all of us on the board, everyone in the organization is really working to help make those connections that will change careers. So I think that's a big one. Lastly, because of the advising that I do, I also partner with Swig Partners, and that is a import and distribution matchmaker for brands. So it could be established brands, or it could be a new or emerging brand that's just either starting up or coming to the United States. And Swig has a 79% placement rate for getting its the brands it represents partnered with distributors and getting that first PO within 6 months.
Wow,
which
that's
is
great.
An astounding stat. Because I think if any, as I talk to so many brands who are out there trying to do blind outreach and get in front of distributors and just find that they, their emails are never returned. It's impossible to connect with anyone. So if anyone wants to learn more about Swig Partners, they can reach out to me directly.
Okay. What about pain points? Is there any pain points that you're seeing from your perspective that you'd want to touch on?
Yeah. I think, there are a lot of pain points for Bevelk, as we've touched on a little bit.
Like, how do you...
It's like, where should we start?
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge I see is, there are a lot. I think one place where it's good to start is to recognize that, younger audiences do have different consumption behaviors than their predecessors, and they may or may not age into the same behaviors as like those who came before them. Like I think, of Gen Z in particular, and I wonder, okay, the oldest Gen Z is around 28 years old right now. This new demographic, new audience is not necessarily aging into the same alcohol consumption behaviors as those who came 10 years prior. What does that mean? Well, I think it's part of an evolution. Like the different intoxicants that were available, 10 years ago are different than today. Today we have THC. We have people experimenting with all sorts of different types of intoxicants. And, that consumption level may not get back up to the same levels as predecessor generations. So if that's the case, then what do? Well, you adapt, right? So you evolve and you meet the younger consumers where they're at. There are products and services and, brands still yet to be created that are going to be effective at figuring out, what is it that Gen Z wants. One brand that I am really excited about that we just featured on the Business of Drinks podcast is Whiny Baby. Do you know this brand?
No.
Okay. So Whiny Baby is a wine brand for Gen Z. And the founder of it, Jessie Ott, she created the name Whiny Baby because she's like, hey, this is for like people who are new to wine. And like people always like made fun of, Gen Zs are just whiny babies. But she did a lot of really, fun and interesting stuff. You look at the labels, and you look at the bottles, they're in white or clear bottles. So it's a red, a white, and a rosé, and these are in clear bottles, which we know for a variety of reasons, like is not the best way necessarily to store wine, because of like light strike and all of that. But hey, these are wines that are meant to be sipped, opened and sipped right away. They have a crown top with little conversation starters on it. They have labels that like peel off that you can like write down who you were with and like the little memory. It has like Lisa Frank sort of like nostalgic fun branding. The juice inside it, it's marketed just as like a white blend or a rosé or a red. It doesn't say the varietals. It doesn't change. It doesn't confuse anyone with what the varietals are. So, and there's also on some of the bottles that are either DTC or sold in certain retailers, there's also like really cute beads, like these colorful beads that are like a bracelet that says whiny baby on it. Right. So like this is just like fun marketing, but like the product itself is actually like super delicious and like enjoyable. It's like maybe it's like slightly sweet, but like something that you can just like totally drink a glass and be like, yeah, I'll have another. It's delicious and a good price point at $17.99. Like, so Jess, who is herself Gen Z, she did a really smart thing. She partnered in a joint venture with McBride sisters, who also really get marketing to a younger and multicultural audience. And she's having a huge amount of success. Last year, I think, was the first year they were available in something like 27 states, and this year they're set to double. They did 6,000 cases of production last year. This year set to double. So like brands like that, where they literally are like bringing something new to the market, that type of innovation is, I think, what is going to add new energy to something like wine. And spirits also has a lot of innovation happening in that sector. So does beer, so does NA, so does THC. I think we're going to see a lot of functional ingredients. We're going to see a lot of marketing by energy levels, marketing by vibe. So, relaxing, calming, energizing, what have you. I think all of these things are opportunities. Certainly with BevAlc, you have to be careful about how you market functional ingredients. But, given like regulations around that, but I think we're going to start to see that the lines between categories blur as, people just don't really care what that sort of base fermentable is anymore. They're drinking across categories, not just in a week, but like in a night. I will go out now and I'll have a cocktail, then I'll have an NA cocktail, then I'll have a glass of wine, right? Like, and then maybe I'll have an NA beer to finish off. Like, so like all these different categories are just like the way we drink now.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It is fun. It's totally fun. I mean, I love it. I love looking at a menu, and no longer do I just look at the wines. I also look at the cocktails, the NA cocktails, the beer, down the line. I'm like constantly looking to see like what's new and interesting that I might want to try. And it's not just me, like the drinks nerd. It's also pretty much everyone at my table.
Yeah. Yeah, it's become a thing, and I'm so happy to see that the on-premise is really jumping in.
Yeah,
because it's really important that they do.
Yeah, definitely,
to support this movement.
Definitely. Yeah. So, like, to the question of what are the pain points, or like what do I kind of hope to see? I would say more non-alcoholic cocktail menus. So like even living in New York, I will say that the number of times that I order a non-alcoholic cocktail and it's just like juice or like 3 juices, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's not breakfast. Like I don't really want grapefruit juice plus pineapple juice plus orange juice. Like that's not a cocktail, right? So I think that the more sophisticated we can get, restaurants and bars about like realizing you can charge full price like for a cocktail, right? There are like a huge range of ingredients that can be used that are not just like sugary juices, but like try some like infused syrups, try the NA spirits, try, any of a number of different ingredients that are not, teas, right? Like there's so many things you can do. And third, you can also charge full price.
Right.
I mean, almost, I would say that the best NA cocktail list that I see in Manhattan right now charge the same price for spirits or non-spirits. Because look, they're putting thought and effort into that cocktail, and customers appreciate it and keep ordering it. So I think realizing that this is a real opportunity, and actually probably a good margin opportunity, to provide a sophisticated cocktail without alcohol. So I think that is something that I think I would love to see more of in 2025.
Yeah, I agree. I think also, some of these non-alcoholic spirits that they're making though are pretty expensive.
True.
And so for us to get that out there, to get, until they can start getting the volume behind it to decrease the price, because I think a lot of consumers are thinking, oh, it's non-alcoholic, great, it's going to be cheaper, and that's just not the case.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it's a great point. And I think there are ways to make it without the NA spirits, by using bitters, by using teas and infusions and stuff like that. But look, I mean, it takes time and effort. So
it does. You got to figure that out.
Exactly. So if we can get consumers to realize, look, the best NA cocktails really do take as much time and effort.
They do.
Certainly. And potentially
or more.
The same cost if you're using an NA spirit or an NA wine, for example. And they really are, it's like an experience to go out and have one of these drinks. And, I mean, I love, there's the Chelsea Hotel I love to go to. They do this incredible, it's a Lyre's based sort of gin, but they have all of these different green herbs, and maybe there's some apple juice in there, but it's all these fresh green herbs, and it's has this curry leaf on top, so it has a little bit of sweet and savory. But honestly, it is one of the most sophisticated cocktails that I had in 2024, and you could not tell that it didn't have alcohol. And I had it over and over, every time I'd go to the Chelsea Hotel, and it's delicious. And it probably is $18 a cocktail, but I don't care. It was so good. So, it's just hey, at this point, in New York City, at least, we're kind of used to paying $8 for that, boba or fancy coffee, or I think we are definitely used to high prices here. But, I think market specific. So if you're in a lower priced market, whatever the kind of good to decent cocktails are in that market, price those NA cocktails accordingly.
Yeah, one of my favorite cocktails last year was in Cozumel over Thanksgiving, and it was a non-alcoholic drink, and it was absolutely divine and delicious. I loved it.
Yeah, totally.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
What about your outlook for 2025? Where are you at? I know we've talked a lot about this on the podcast, but
yeah, definitely. I think from a sales and markets perspective, it's going to be flat or down this year. But, look, there's even opportunities within that, right? Some brands will not survive. And that is sad, but there are a huge proliferation of brands. So the brands that find ways to connect with audiences most effectively will be the ones that survive. And that, can come in a variety of different forms. Some brands are having incredible DTC success. Some brands are really focused on-premise. Others are focused on, retail outlets or chain retail. So there's so many different ways to focus your efforts, but I think brands need to be very strategic about how they're spending their dollars. And it's not just marketing dollars, it's the sales effort and the channel strategy and every piece of, managing the business fiscally responsible. Because I think that it's going to be, in the short term, probably harder to get funding. as we've seen for the entire past year, probably 18 months. So tough to get more funding, and the people who, or funds that do provide money for your business are going to want a very specific line item of how that money is set to be spent. So I think having a very clear understanding of your plan is going to be crucial now more than ever. It used to be a situation where you could say like, hey, we need like a couple $1,000,000 to really blow out marketing for this brand. Like that, those days are over. Maybe they'll come back, who knows? But at this point, like, just imagine that every dollar is going to have to be spoken for. And I will again say there are opportunities in that, which is, you may, as a brand, find yourself having to get into the black, into positive territory on a much quicker timeline than you originally anticipated. But is that so bad? You may not have as much to work with, but there may be strategies that you can find. Certainly at Business of Drinks, we are talking to brands every day about what is working right now. And brands come to us all the time and say, hey, I'm having a challenge in this particular area. And we intentionally go out and try to find other brands or advisors or services that can provide an unlock for their businesses. So we'll either interview those people on the podcast or connect them separately. But we're always trying to look for what is working right now and how can we help more brands get to profitability and more people in the industry, whether it's a, import or distribution portfolio, or a retailer, or someone working in on-premise. Like, I am always excited to hear from people in the industry about what's working, what's not working, and where they see the opportunities, because oftentimes the people who are actually on the floor and in those sales calls and reacting to sales data in real time, like, they're the most informed about what is actually happening in the industry. So I do try to talk to as many people in the business as possible on a weekly basis to understand what's really happening out there. And I think that's something that will continue, because, you said, like, what's happening in the next 6 to 12 months. There have to be those strategic ways of working that some brands are finding. And if we can share those with other brands to help lift all boats, then I will feel we have done our job.
Yeah, no, that's great. You're digging into innovation, which it seems like, from talking, from your early career, you've always kind of been into that trend space.
Yeah, definitely. I think I really am interested. I think it goes back to that, bringing it full circle back to the anthropology at the beginning of my career. People and the way they behave are fascinating. Like, I've always found that to be fascinating. So it's pretty interesting to me that now I have circled around in my career to actually do this research where I ask people, why are you drinking this thing? How did you find it? How did you decide to buy it? Like, what else are you drinking? So those types of conversations, and like just observing people around me, trying to dine out with lots of different audiences of people and kind of like watch what everyone's doing. That's a delicious form of research.
Yeah, for sure. Well, come on down to Orlando. Well, you can observe me.
Anytime. I would love to know what's happening in Orlando. There's some good cocktail bars down there.
Yeah, even some NA ones.
Oh, wow. Nice. I love that. Okay, well, we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, they were on my podcast the first year. I guess they don't have a spot anymore. So it was this really cool, this guy was kind of in a theater, and so they had decored it sort of Victorian style, and everything in there was for sale.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was so busy at night that you had to make reservations, and you could only stay a certain amount of time, I think it was. But it's 500 square feet. It was just this cute, really fun space where they had created these really fun cocktails, and it was a retail store also.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that.
So
That's
if
smart.
you wanted to have a cocktail before dinner,
Yeah.
you'd come and they'd kind of do a little show or, whatever. It was really fun. It was really interesting.
I love that.
Yeah. And then there's the Et Hotel, which I haven't been to yet. And that is all non-alcoholic spirits. They have a chef and they have really high-end food and everything, but then they have no alcohol.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, places for me to add to my list.
Yeah.
Nice.
So one last question, Erica. What do you like to do for fun or outside of work?
Yeah, I am a huge traveler. Again, probably that anthropology tie, but I love traveling. I travel, as much as I can. I was just in Rome with my kids and in France last month. And I think that's it goes back to that interest in people and cultures and what's happening. Like, I love to, take tours in places and make dinner with people in whatever destination it is, or those sorts of immersive experiences, and just kind of talk to people about what are their neighborhoods like, what's happening in their cities.
Yeah.
So I think, I definitely have made a lot of friends from throughout the world, I would say. So it's a great opportunity whenever I can get to a country and reconnect with people and talk to them about what's happening in their industries. And of course, I always have to ask, what are people drinking? What are people excited about? All of that. So I think travel definitely is one of them. And then I also recently learned how to fly fish.
That's fun. That's hard.
It is hard. But I have landed several trout at this time.
Nice.
Yes.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
We do catch and release. But there is a little trout stream up in the Catskill Mountains that we go to, and it's just it's so relaxing and meditative, but also exciting, because there's all sorts of wild stuff happening on the banks of a quiet river that you just are not aware of until you're sitting there quietly and watching, and suddenly a mink darts out in front of you and crosses the river, and you're like, oh my God, what is happening? What is that creature? But it's it's fascinating.
Google.
Yeah, exactly. But it's fascinating that there's this whole world that's just happening around us. And if we take a moment to pause and immerse ourselves in it, it's surprising what we can see. And it's just, I really love it. And so that's something I've been getting great joy out of.
So your recent travels to Italy and to France, do they have NA Bev cocktails like we do?
I did have some NA cocktails, but it was more, I would say that at least where we were in France and Italy, not as robust. I probably wasn't also, really looking for them. But there were a couple NA cocktails at the hotels that we were at. So I think it's definitely seems to be kind of up and coming. There's a ton of NA beer that I saw over there. But I didn't really see many NA wines. I know they exist, but I didn't really see them on restaurant menus. Okay. So I think, it's very uneven. I would say with NA stuff, it's super uneven in this country, super uneven in Europe and other parts of the world. Some places like Germany have a much more robust sort of long-standing NA beer tradition. So some countries have a huge array of NA beers, but uneven. So I think that's a goal for 2025. Let's see more NA across the board.
Yeah. And I eat a gluten-free lifestyle. And so when we went to Italy, and I think it was 2019, I was shocked at all the gluten-free beers over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
gluten-free pastas on menus. I saw
everywhere.
For sure.
I know. And they're just as good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I miss Italy.
Oh, such a beautiful place.
Oh, I could eat anything over there. Nothing bothered me.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all ancient grain. And
yeah, definitely.
Stuff.
different gluten content, fresher, less processed flours and stuff. A lot different in the flour situation there, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that place.
So good.
Yeah, so good. All right. Well, is there anything else that we haven't mentioned? One thing I'm thinking about your podcast, how often do you release a podcast?
Yeah, so Business of Drinks is weekly now. We release a podcast every week, and so we have a main person that we interview, usually an innovator or icon in the industry in some way, who's doing something very notable. And then we have a last call, which is basically like our short at the end of it, where we're talking either about like brands that we're interested in trying, or that we have tried that we're interested in like talking about for some reason. And we talk about, we have some PSAs. Today we were doing a PSA for distributors. So we were saying like, look, it's January and February. January and February is the time, if you are a brand, that you need to be reaching out to distributors, because that's when they're looking at what are the gaps in my portfolio? Where is there perhaps a pricing gap that we could fill? Is there an emerging category we're not part of? Like they're looking at all of these portfolio performance sort of issues, and like how can we optimize for the year ahead? So we recorded like a fun little PSA that is basically like, hey, brands, reach out to distributors. Now is the time. If you want to get with a new distributor and like increase your market share in 2025, do it now. So we have all sorts
those are fun. I like
conversations,
those.
like little shorts that we do.
They're fun. I like it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's a good format. And I guess it's businessofdrinks.com if they want to get in touch with you.
Yeah, definitely. People who have questions or want to reach out directly, it's podcast@businessofdrinks.com. And you can also just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I do make a very strong effort to respond to every message. So please reach out to me, whether you're a brand or someone in the industry. However I can help, I will definitely try to connect you. If I can't help myself, I will try to connect you with people who can.
Nice. Excellent. All right. Well, Erica, this has been really fun. I love all your insight. I could sit here and talk to you about it another hour, but we're already coming up here, I think, about on an hour and a half. But we'll have to do this again. And I've thought through our conversation. I think we'll do a quarterly review, so they haven't heard the end of us together.
Nice.
With the other ladies. I think that'll be really fun. And we'll do it towards the end of the quarter. Then that way I can get it ready and release it for the beginning of the next quarter so that it's not so delayed. But I think that'll be a lot of fun. I think the five of us got along really, really well. So there's some fun stuff to look forward to.
Awesome. Lots to look forward to in 2025. Don't let the headlines scare you. There is a way forward for so many companies in this industry, and we will all find success together.
Yes, we will. I agreed. 100%. Kumbaya. We'll sing Kumbaya and hold on to hands.
Kumbaya.
We'll get through it.
Kumbaya and peace out.
That's right. Peace out. I do say that a lot. All righty. Well, thank you. And I'm going to wave goodbye and we'll see you soon.
Bye. Thanks so much, Jessie, for having me on.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye. Produced by Fedora J Productions.